Hey Vince, I thought I'd answer your topic of the week on painting the miniatures. And the two big questions that I think you asked were, how much do I value the painting process of them, and how important is it for me to have a um, game behind or a game at the end of the tunnel of the painting process for me to play these miniatures with. And I know there's a bit on the pre-painted stuff, and I'll get to that near the end. The second question is the one I really want to tackle first, and it's very important to have a game behind it. I don't think I would be painting or even have gotten into any sort of painting if it wasn't for having the game behind it. And I'll put it into another perspective that it's helped me open up as to trying other, or the painting aspect of the hobby has opened me up to actually trying other things, such as painting in other settings. And I'll turn the camera real quick. But you can see kind of on the top, I've got a few other paintings that I've actually painted myself. And I never would have gone and even gone out to go try doing this painting if I didn't have a coworker that was really involved with doing it. But I never would have, I probably wouldn't have taken her up on the offer if I hadn't been doing this painting of miniatures for the longest time. So that's kind of built in something and helped me out in that respect. But I don't think I would even be painting these miniatures if I didn't have, I wouldn't have those paintings. I wouldn't be painting these miniatures if I hadn't been playing or been interested in Warhammer as a game in the first place. And I think you can keep going back as to, you know, if I wasn't interested in Warhammer, if I wasn't interested in any of the other role-playing games of the fantasy setting, or Magic the Gathering, or being a nerd, or getting whatever, I think you can translate it all the way back to that. But I know a lot of this stuff, when we have these games too, I mean, the other part about having miniatures, we can always have the models out there to reflect it. And painting the miniature helps with immersion into the setting, because we can always play on just a flat table or a board, you know, a draw out of something on a piece of paper and write in, okay, I've got an R here, that means a ranger, whatever you want it to mean. I don't know why I came up with R first. Or I could put an O here, and that means it's an orc. I can put like 10 O's here, and that means it's a unit of 10 orcs. We can always keep going that direction as far as the game painting goes, but we want to actually experience, the part of the miniature wargaming hobby is to actually experience miniature war games, to try to make this as real as possible, because putting actual army of orcs on the field means that we're probably fighting said orcs to the death. But okay, we can't use real orcs, let's use fake orcs, and we can't have, you know, be moving 100 giant pieces like Mr. Burns Simpson's chess set, where there's actual people in these chess costumes out on a giant squares. We can't actually do that either, so let's shrink them down to this size and then simulate it from there. And you can keep going further as far as the game goes and say, well, we don't actually need painted models, we can just use plastic model, or, you know, unpainted plastic models. And oh, we don't really need unpainted plastic models, we can just use the base, or we can just use a, you know, a little square piece of paper that says that this is an orc boy or whatever. Here's where I'm at odds. As important as it is to have a game behind it, I absolutely value the painting process with it. I don't think a lot of us would ever get into this game if you were to show a bunch of plastic models. I think if you were to put, even on orcs, just a unpainted plastic model looks horrible compared to a model that is just painted green and looks exactly the same. The Blood Bowl kit's kind of the one for that. And then if you start differentiating things like, you know, black armor, black clothing, actual metal swords, instead of just entirely green or whatnot, we start actually valuing, you know, this starts looking, okay, it's getting more immersive as we go forward. And that's what I value about the painting aspect of the game. But the problem that we have as a community is that painting takes a shit ton of time. I've got this Stormcast orc guy that I built myself. I mean, the fact that I had to green stuff the back of his head on there, and that took a little bit, and it took 3 hours to dry or whatnot. But I think I worked on this guy for 3 days, and that was the only thing I did. I maybe worked 2 hours every night on him or whatnot. But if I had to create an entire army of Stormcast guys like this, just for 30 figures at 6 hours, 2 hours a night or whatnot, that's doing math real quick. 30 guys, 6 hours to entirely complete them is 180 hours worth of time, and then doing it 2 hours a night. That takes me 90 days. That takes me 3 months. If I'm not as long as I'm keeping up with the 2 hours on average every time, and that's not what I want to be doing for the next 3 months. I might want to go hang out with friends. I might want to watch TV all the. I might have a long work night and want to go watch TV. We can't all be hermits like Vince is, or like you are, Vince. Sorry to tell you that, but you already know that. And when I go back to the watercolor paintings up there, those each took me 2 hours to do, and I actually have something I can hang on my wall. The miniatures are very small, and you have to have a pile of them in your room before you actually have anything to fill with it. But nobody would, I don't know very many people that would show up to a tournament or anything like that with an unpainted army, or with just plastic guys. For the most part, every single tournament has a very big no. You can't say a horse is actually a human or an orc is actually a Sylvaneth or something like that. So you actually have to get the modeling right. But I know a lot of tournaments also frown upon having, and everybody holds it to this 3-color standard, which is like primer, base coat of 1 color, and then wash, and that's 3 colors, which that's not fantastic either. But we fall into this trap in which in order to get into tournaments and whatnot, you have to have a fully painted army on the table, which that really takes a new player who's coming into the game and saying, well, I really like the look of this game. I'd like to join it. How do I join as quick as possible? Well, you need to get an army book. I mean, we talk about the cost of buying the miniatures themselves. The amount of time you have to invest in painting them up too is a huge downfall and a huge push away. And in fact, I would say the painting is worse than the price to get into the game, because if you build the model collection, you're like, well, can I play? And a lot of people are still like, yes, you can come play. But if you were to go into the painting, it's, well, you need to spend X amount of time. You still need to spend time painting it. Well, I've already spent the money on it, and you're telling me I can't play because I have to get it up to this painting standard. Yes, you do. Well, now I feel betrayed because you told me I had to build it first, and now you're telling me I also have to paint it. Well, I'm not even going to bother painting it. I'm just going to, pass it on to the next guy and let him deal with all that. And so at this point, that comes to pre-painted figures, which is pre-painted figures enhance the value of the game. And I know you can, a lot of times pre-painted figures look like crap, HeroClix, but a lot of times, people just repaint the pre-painted figures anyway. And that's, if that's well, this doesn't look as good as I think it should, I'm going to repaint it. Go ahead and repaint it. That I don't think anybody's had a problem with that. But I don't think ever having pre-painted figures has ever had anybody say, no, I'm not going to get into this game at all. So I think it's very hard not to look at painting in this process as a justifying the ends or the end of the journey. The real reason we keep painting these models is it's a little bit to enhance our own immersion into it, but a lot of our immersion is enhanced just by having the model itself on the table. as opposed to, you know, a bunch of square pieces of paper cut out. Painting kind of continues that, but really what ends our, you know, our journey, or what really justify the biggest reason we do this, I think a lot of people paint up these models, is because everybody in the community says you have to paint up the models. And I don't think there's, it is a massive chore just to do that much. And to get it to a reasonable looking standard. Even these orc boys, I think even the base coat, it was an hour for each of these, and that was, I only did 3, but it still takes a lot of time just to get it to just a base coat on it. So hope that answers your question, Vince.